Secretary Jared Perdue, Executive Director Carlos Ocaris. We're also Representative Bill Connerly and Mike Ron, the port chairman of the board here. We were here last year, of course, with extenuating circumstances, and we're here with another great announcement that's going to, I think, be really, really good for the port. As you know, we've consistently been ranked as the top economy in the country of all 50 states over the last 2 years by multiple publications. That has been the case. If you look at GDP growth since I took office, we've grown in Florida by over 30%, our state's economy. We would be, I think, the 13th or 14th largest economy in the world if we were our own country, and our growth rate exceeds every large state and every state except, I believe, Idaho. But, you know, I think Idaho's population is probably, I don't know if it's less than Manatee County, it might be less than Sarasota, but it's definitely less than a lot of counties, you know, that we have in Florida for sure. We continue to be #1 in new business formations, continue to have a strong AAA credit rating. We have added jobs 52 of the last 56 months in the private sector. For the 50th month in a row, our unemployment rate has been lower than the national average, and our year-over-year private sector job growth rate has exceeded the nation's job growth rate for 40 consecutive months. And we just had, I saw some stuff on the Transstrom, I did a little response about, and I don't know why we have to do these comparisons anymore, because the truth is obvious, and I think people have voted with their feet, but it was said that somehow California does better on like tax and some of these metrics, and it's just insane to even think that. California has the stiffest income tax of all 50 states. I think it gets up to like 13-something%. Florida has no income tax for anybody, and so we're obviously better there. But you say, oh, well, you don't have an income tax, but you have a sales tax. But get this, even though California has the highest income tax, their sales tax is higher than Florida's. Their sales tax is the highest in the United States of America. Then you look at other things that affect people like gas prices. California has the highest gas prices in the entire United States of America. They're averaging about $5 a gallon. We're averaging about $3 a gallon right now. Obviously, we know that can fluctuate, but the delta between the two is always, and it's because of their taxes and regulations and all the policies they put on. And then utility. Their utility rates are twice what Florida's utility rates are. So in terms of being a friend of the taxpayer, in terms of having a strong environment that people are able to do well in, you know, we obviously do that. Yeah, look, they've got Silicon Valley, they've got things where people make a lot of money, but that's in spite of the policies. That's not because of the policies. And if you look at our fiscal posture, and we'll see, you know, the legislature is in session now, so they're going to produce a budget for next year. But our current budget that we're operating under spends less money this year than we did the year before. How many places are actually reducing spending? We've paid down since we just celebrated our 180th anniversary as a state. And if you take 180 years, all the debt that Florida accumulated during that period of time, just since I took office, we've paid off 41% of that. And we're going to do more over the next couple years, which is great. So now of all the states that have debt, we have the lowest per capita debt of any state in the country. Your share as a Floridian of our state's debt is about $660. Your share of the U.S. federal debt, which is $36 trillion and counting, would be over $100,000 per U.S. citizen, and that obviously continues to go up. So we've done it right, and we've done it on really good budget. New York, a lot of people have moved from New York to Florida. I mean, that's always been the case to a certain extent, but certainly recently. New York now has millions fewer people than we do. They always had more people than us until relatively recently, and then we were kind of comparable. Now we're over 23 million. They're around 19.5 million, and yet with millions of more people, our budget is less than half of their budget. And yet, where is all this money going? People come here, they can get a driver's license much easier. The roads are better. We just ranked #1 in another education survey, the Education Freedom by EdChoice, a national publication, ranked us #1 in that. We were #1 in education by U.S. News last 2 years. So where's this money going? And they're not treating taxpayers well, so we're doing that. And I think those states that are really high tax, what ends up happening is the organs of the government themselves become constituents to the money going to, you know, this group or that group or the union. And so they end up really controlling the government, not for the overall public interest, but for those specific discrete interests. And so that's why they do the policies that they do. We do it much different. We're really focused on what's in the public's interest and making sure that we're hitting these things in the big way. And that in infrastructure has been something that we've been really, really supportive of. We've done an awful lot to advance infrastructure in Florida at our seaports, but also on our roads. We did a project called Moving Florida Forward, where we sunk billions of dollars into accelerating some of the projects around the state that were slated to start, but a lot of them not slated to start until next decade. Now we're getting them done, starting now, finishing them 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even 15 years ahead of schedule, and we're proud of doing that. And one of the tools we have for infrastructure is this job growth grant fund. So we've been able to give grants around the country, around the state, for things that can really have value. So that's helped industrial parks, it's helped different types of transportation, and we have, of course, used it at the seaports. And Florida being a big peninsula, you would imagine that seaports would be very, very important. Currently, our seaports in Florida support nearly 1.2 million jobs and contribute to over $195 billion in total economic value to the state. Our maritime activities account for about 13% of Florida's GDP and contribute over $4 billion to state and local tax coffers. Florida seaports continue to grow, and that is evident here at SeaPort Manatee. This is the primary deepwater seaport in Southwest Florida. Its strategic location at the mouth of Tampa Bay and as the closest deepwater seaport to the Panama Canal allow it to handle 400 million gallons of transportation fuel, fruits and vegetables, appliances, construction materials, and wood for distribution across Southwest Florida and the entire southeastern United States. In 2023, SeaPort Manatee supported 42,000 U.S. jobs, generated $275 million in state and local tax revenue, and contributed $7.3 billion in economic value to the economy. SeaPort Manatee has played an important role in responding to many of the recent disasters that Florida has faced. Of course, this place was at the epicenter of Helene with the surge, and then also Hurricane Milton, and those were back-to-back punches. Now, we knew that this was important, and we wanted to do what we could to be helpful. So after damage assessments estimated significant losses, we stepped in as a state to help mitigate some of the impact on the costs. We awarded SeaPort Manatee $9.5 million to jumpstart its recovery efforts and help repair impacted infrastructure. So that's berth repairs, dredging, security needs, fortification of the surviving infrastructure. We also supported the port's rebuild by providing subject matter experts and skilled workers from the Florida Department of Transportation. We also directed the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to expedite all permits for the immediate rebuild of port infrastructure, and we provided support from the Florida Division of Emergency Management in navigating the FEMA awards process, and we provided personnel from the Florida National Guard to reestablish perimeter security and assist in repairing the port fence. Now, every state dollar we've invested in seaport infrastructure, we believe returns a significant amount of money to the economy. We're proud to make these investments, and we understand how important it is. And I would also note last year, when we were facing the wreckage of these hurricanes, you had the prospect of the longshoremen launching a strike that would have threatened our supply chain right before holiday season. And I said, we're going to use National Guard. We're going to do whatever we could to keep this going. And it was SeaPort Manatee that was one of the first that was willing to step up and support our supply chain as other ports were facing shutdowns because of the strike. So we prepared our state and National Guard to deploy to SeaPort Manatee to operate critical port duties and ensure port functions could continue for the duration. Luckily, it did not come to that, but we were prepared, and SeaPort Manatee was on the front lines in that effort. And I want to know that the state, and I know a lot of people really appreciate willing to do that. So everywhere you look in the region, you can see the impact of SeaPort Manatee on the daily lives of Floridians, especially those in the Bay Area and Southwest Florida, which is why we're here today. We want to continue to make strong investments in ports like this one, which will expand opportunities for new businesses and opportunities for more operations. So today I'm announcing that through the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund, we are awarding $2 million to the Manatee County Port Authority to make key infrastructure improvements at SeaPort Manatee. Now, these funds will be used to rebuild and repave South Dock Street at SeaPort Manatee and make additional infrastructure improvements, including stormwater mitigation. This award will help fulfill the demand from current and new businesses as they expand their operations and create new jobs. The project is expected to create 300 jobs. Beyond enhancing port efficiency, these upgrades will facilitate supporting an expansion for home, aerospace, and automotive product manufacturer Honeywell. This includes supporting Honeywell's expected development of new businesses over the next 5 years, including a cold storage warehouse, a fuel terminal, and a manufacturing facility. So I'm proud to be able to do this award. We appreciate what's been done here. We know that there's a lot of prospects to do a lot more, and we need it. I mean, this part of the state, the state has obviously grown dramatically anyways, but certainly this part of the state has grown significantly when you look at the Bradenton, Sarasota areas and even beyond as you get into Charlotte County. And of course, Collier has always been, and Lee have had a lot of people for a long time. So this is really key, I think, to the state's success going forward. So I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to be able to bring up some people. So we'll start with Jared Perdue first, then we'll hear from Carlos, and then Mike.
Thank you, Governor. So happy to be with you here today at SeaPort Manatee, which is truly a crown jewel of Southwest Florida. And I'll tell you, no governor has done more for infrastructure than Governor DeSantis. If you look at Florida's 16 deepwater seaports alone, under the governor's tenure, we've invested over $1 billion in seaport infrastructure. So that's truly incredible, and it's really one of those things that has helped our economy continue to grow and thrive. We're actually in a new building here on SeaPort Manatee, and believe it or not, this building is going to be utilized to process de-icing salt. You know, who would have thought that de-icing salt going to the north would come through Port Manatee? And I just wanted to tell the port director, Carlos, that as the salt is headed north, maybe he could drop a little off in the Panhandle, since now we have major snow events. We're gonna be needing it, evidently. But really happy to be here to announce this job growth grant of $2 million. It's going to help SeaPort Manatee continue to improve the infrastructure on this port. The growth has really just been tremendous, and you heard from the governor the impact that has on the economy, and so we're really excited to keep making those investments. If you look at the FDOT investments with SeaPort Manatee over these last few years, it's totaling over $40 million, and that's really a testament to the growth that's continuing to occur here, and really SeaPort Manatee's forward-thinking vision for preparing future growth in the economy. So really proud to be here to announce this, and we're looking forward to the continued partnership and strengthening of the supply chain and the economy here in Southwest Florida. Thank you, Governor.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. We really appreciate, the immeasurable support the state of Florida, FDOT, and Commerce bring to the port and to international trade. That creates opportunities, it creates jobs. Just like the de-icing salt from the north, or further north, we're handling it here first. Who would have thought that, that the de-icing for Pittsburgh and so on is going to happen here at Manatee and in Florida in particular. Florida, with its 16 public seaports, contributes about $195 billion annually to the economy. It's huge. So taken as a port system, which is what we have, the impact that Florida has on the rest of the country is enormous because of its abundance of ports. Very few ports, very few states have as many ports as we do working so well together. As a result, the support of the state to help us grow the port is critical. We can't just do it by charging, super high fees, super high taxes to these companies. And that results in them investing and them creating additional opportunities. That's what it's about. It's having other people invest the money here from foreign countries. The one we're here today, AMT, Agunsa Manatee Terminal, is part of a company that is based in Santiago, Chile. Okay. We have companies from Brazil, we have companies from Argentina, we have companies from all over Latin America especially, and even Europe. The best testament to what we can do here is that others feel so strong about it that they're willing to invest in this country. Foreign direct investment is what we pursue in addition to seaports. We want those countries and those companies to invest here. So as a result, really, we're seeing the opportunities come our way, and we help these companies, and the Port Authority and the county help the companies, and the Governor's Office at Commerce help the companies locate here. So as a result, we really want to be able to welcome these companies, be ready, have the roads. We also, of course, want to thank Secretary Perdue, because he's been critical in helping us, even going on foreign missions with the Ports Council overseas. Nothing impresses people more than when you bring a Secretary of Commerce, and Transportation to that country. It really says something about, how we feel about that community and those opportunities. It's unique. And as a result, even with Governor DeSantis, recently in Italy, fantastic trip, big, one of the largest countries in Europe. We want to diversify, of course, more to Europe as well. We just cannot depend on living on Latin American business. So as a result, the port is ready to handle that. We want to supersize the port, grow the port more with the entire Florida seaport system. And I think we're doing it with the state and the Secretary's support. Now I'd like to introduce the Chair of the Port Authority, Chairman Mike Ron.
Good morning, Governor. Thank you for being here today. Good morning. It's another wonderful day here at SeaPort Manatee. On behalf of the Port Authority, our Executive Director, Carlos Piqueras, our great staff, and our wonderful business partners here at SeaPort Manatee, welcome to the best port in the state of Florida and the Southeast United States. This is the best port in Florida. This morning, we're honored to have America's governor, our governor, the governor of the free state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, with us this morning. It's an honor for you to be here, sir, and it's always great to see you. Governor, we thank you for your continued support and commitment to SeaPort Manatee. With your support and your team's support of FDOT and the Department of Commerce, SeaPort Manatee continues to grow and thrive as the best seaport in Florida. But also, Governor, we want to thank you for your service and dedication to our great nation and to the state of Florida. And Governor, thank you again for all you do for SeaPort Manatee, the citizens of Manatee County, and the citizens of the state of Florida. Thank you, Governor. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. If all the Port Authority commissioners could come forward, Charlie, Courtney, Representative Connerly, we're all going to go and get a picture with the governor for the presentation of the check.
Got it? All right. There you go. Who wants it?
You can endorse this over there? There you go. We appreciate it.
Hi. How you doing?
Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, appreciate it. Well, we're excited. I know this will make a big difference. And yeah, I mean, you have the de-icing salt coming through here. It just shows you, I mean, there's all kind of things happening. We did use it in January up in Northwest Florida. Our previous record for snow in the state had been 4 inches, and we got 10 inches up in Milton, Florida. And so we had snow plows, we had the salt, because we were worried, when you Florida driving is challenging enough to manage, but then when you add in icy roads, it's like, man, that's not a good combination. But I think everything worked really well, and we were able to get things going, particularly with the bridges and everything. But yeah, I mean, 10 inches of snow in January in the state of Florida, in Northwest Florida, that's one for the record books. Okay, we got any questions? Well, I would say I'm vindicating people's constitutional Second Amendment rights, and we always have an obligation to do that. So if you look at what we've done, we have constitutional carry. So you can carry a firearm concealed. That is, in law, is a constitutional right. But if you take your jacket off and put your jacket on and you have a firearm in your holster, somehow you could be prosecuted for that because it's a, quote, open carry, and it doesn't make sense. Other states have actually done the opposite in some respects. So this is just common sense stuff. I think the legislature, prior to me becoming governor, they went overboard on some of the things, and I think it did violate people's due process rights. I think it totally eliminated rights for young adults. I mean, you have some 20-year-old Marine be out there carrying a firearm in Fallujah, back where I served back in the day, and then they come here and they can't purchase a rifle to go hunting or something like that. It just is, it's not something that is consistent with due process. And I would note, when we did constitutional carry, people were saying, oh my gosh, this is like, and they were trying to create some type of narrative that this was going to be problematic, and yet our crime rate's at a 50-year low. You know, it just, reality is law-abiding gun owners are part of the solution. They're not part of the problem. And a criminal doesn't care about any of these restrictions about where you can carry or if you can carry. Right, if they're going to go commit a crime, they're going to go commit a crime. And I think it's been borne out. And other states have done similar things and seen similar results. The states that have the most stringent infringements on Second Amendment, a lot of them have like really serious problems, like Chicago and some of these other places. So I've always been, this is not anything new for me. This is what, I mean, I said back in 18 where my position was, and we've been consistent the whole time. So we'll see, you know, if the legislature responds. I do know that a lot of people run for office, you know, saying Second Amendment. So the question is, when you get in, are you going to follow through with that or not? And I think people want to see follow through. Yes, sir. So it's interesting. Mason vacillates between the Rays and the Marlins just because, you know, he just, when he sees something or whatever. But we actually got to go down, you know, we've been able to do some spring training over the years, and we're very fortunate to have a lot of good clubs in Florida. I mean, if you look, we've got all these AL East teams, which they're very good. The Orioles are good. The Red Sox are good. They're going to be good this year. Yankees, I think, will probably be good. I know they've had some injuries and whatnot. Look, on the Rays, you know, my view is you know, it can be a viable, good franchise. I mean, they've had good baseball decisions that have been made over the years. I mean, with really significant financial challenges, they've still been able to produce a good product and compete in a very difficult division. But the fan and the attendance really hasn't been there. And I think the question is why? I could just tell you, as having grown up in the Tampa Bay area, there were 10 times more baseball fans than hockey fans. And yet, one of the most successful franchises has been the Tampa Bay Lightning. And because I think, you know, I think Jeff Vinnick did a great job. They really got involved in the community. It became something that people wanted to be a part of. And so they have good attendance. They've obviously been able to win Stanley Cups. And, you know, look, I mentioned the state of the state, but I mean, you know, there have been more Stanley Cups won in Florida since I've been governor than Canada's won since Trudeau's been prime minister. That's just the truth. But I think it's important that baseball needs to be in Florida. Obviously, we have one in Miami, but in this part of the state, this is a great part of the country for baseball. And I think it needs to, I think it can succeed, but it's gotta have the right direction. You gotta have the right infrastructure. And all that. So, you know, I don't really get involved in this or that because there's other people that can handle that. But just as a baseball fan and as a Floridian, I know baseball can do well in the Tampa Bay area. I have no doubt that it can do well. You know, it's interesting on the Tropicana, you know, because they have the roof, and you know, honestly, you kind of forget that it's not really a roof; it's like a canvas that covered that dome, and it was rated for 115-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Well, we had people for Hurricane Milton, we had some first responders staged because it's a great staging area. It's right there in St. Pete. You have guys, they can go out as soon as the storm passes. And, you know, Kevin Guthrie is very good at this. He made the decision to pull them out as Milton was going because he didn't think that it would be able to handle it. And sure enough, that was the correct decision. It didn't handle it. And so you now have this situation where the roof's gone. They're going to play in Steinbrenner. But then how much is it going to cost to fix that? What about creating a different stadium? And the challenge that we have in Florida is to do baseball, you probably have to do it where there's a covering because it's just the rainy season. It makes it more, you probably have too many rainouts. People say it's too hot. Yeah, I mean, it is hot, but I think more than that is just the rain. So once you start talking about having a cover, however much a stadium would cost, you add a lot to that, right? I mean, if you could do a good one for $1 billion, which maybe you can't even do that anymore, but let's say $1 billion, it's probably another $500 million to put a good cover on top of it, and a retractable would even be more. So these are things I know that the communities are doing. I know they're having the issues with Pinellas. It's an unfortunate situation. I know there's people that have been interested in buying the team. You know, I've been hearing the team was going to be sold for like years now. Oh, government's going to happen, and then never seems to really happen. But maybe that. I know there's people that are interested in doing it, and there's people that want to bring baseball to other parts of the state. Not necessarily the Rays, but maybe an expansion team to Orlando. People talked about. So I'm just hoping that it works out for the folks here in the Tampa Bay area. But certainly from a Florida perspective, we need to have a Major League Baseball franchise in this part of the state. We're one of the fastest growing this is one of the most fastest growing markets in the country. It's already a massive market. There is no way that it can't be successful. And they've made really good baseball decisions over the years compared to some of these other teams that have had more bloated payrolls. So I think it definitely can work. We just got to they got to figure out what that formula is. But I can tell you this. I have spoken to the Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred, and he has given me assurances, you know, there is no way they want to leave Florida. They're committed to it working here because we have the fastest growing state. We have all this stuff going. It would not be a good look for Major League Baseball if you ended up doing that. So I'm hoping that this could all get resolved, but I have no doubt. I mean, when the Bucks do well, huge interest, right? The Lightning have generated huge interest. There's no reason why the Rays can't generate really big interest and really big support. But you know, there's certain pieces of the puzzle that just have to be put in place, and there's certain factors that go involved in that in terms of how you get it right. So we'll see what happens, but we're going to be continuing to root for sports to do well here. I think we have done very well. Obviously, in hockey, we've done tremendous between the Lightning and South Florida. I mean, who would have thought that 20 years ago that Florida would be such a good hockey state, and people really like it. And it's been something that's and incidentally, you know, on these Canadians, they're coming. Like, no, I'm running into Canadians left and right. And it's like anecdotal, but like they're here. Like they are here, they're vacationing. There has not been a boycott of Florida, I can tell you that. I've seen a lot all throughout Central Florida over the last couple weeks for sure. So they're here. But, you know, we've got really good. And then it was just a couple years ago where we had all three Florida NFL teams were in the playoffs. I know the Jags had a rough run last year. It was a lot easier with the Bucks when we had Tom as the quarterback because, I mean, it was plug and play. You know, it's interesting. When he was at New England, they said, I mean, like, I thought he was the greatest of all time. Most people did, but the naysayers would be, well, yeah, he won 6 Super, but it's the system. It's Belichick, and it's the ownership. And not that Belichick's a great coach, Bob Kraft's a great owner, but it was the Patriots had a system. Well, what happens? Tom comes to Tampa. He takes a pretty mediocre NFL team and wins a Super Bowl. What happens to New England? The bottom immediately falls out of the franchise. No, Brady wasn't the product of the system. Brady was the system. He was the straw that stirred the drink, and he was the reason why they won the 6 Super Bowls more than anything else, and it is a team effort, and he was the reason why Tampa were able to win our 2nd Super Bowl. And then really, if you look at his 2nd season, they ran into the Rams, and had they beat the Rams, I think they would have won out there. I mean, he threw for like 4,500 yards, just ridiculous statistics with that. So, but NFL, and I know the Dolphins, have been pretty good. We're waiting for them to get over the hump, but we've done well there. So now I think the last one is Major League Baseball to get those franchises humming. Because like Miami, are you kidding me? There's more baseball fans down there than just about. It's like one of the best places. In fact, one of my friends who's in Major League Baseball says he thinks the best baseball in the United States for scouting is down in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, especially these Catholic schools. Like, they produce great players. So there's no reason they can't do well there. And I know from growing up in Tampa Bay, people like baseball, and they're going to do it. Then we just have to get Florida back to where we used to be on college football, because it used to be year in, year out. It was like a Florida team was up there. I know Florida State had a good year 2 years ago. Last year was rough. I think Florida Gators look good. I think they're going to be. In position. They got a very tough schedule, but I think they're going to be in position. And then we'll see with Miami. They got Georgia's quarterback coming in. He's battling some injuries, but it could be interesting there as well. Yes. Yeah, so I think most people know I called a special session of the legislature in January to do a number of things, but one of the things we wanted to do is have all state and local law enforcement have a legal duty to assist with the enforcement of federal immigration laws. Because if you think about it, Florida Highway Patrol pulls somebody over on a highway who's driving drunk, they have no license, they're not here legally. Being able to just transport them to ICE and get them out is the easiest way to do it. There's some states where they do the opposite. They try to block immigration enforcement. We aren't a sanctuary state, and we banned sanctuary cities my first year as governor, but it's not enough to just not sabotage. You got to be part of the solution. So we now have all 67 counties. And yes, most of those sheriffs are more prone to want to enforce the law, but not all 67 necessarily. But because you have the obligation, all 67 counties with their sheriff's department have done what are called 287G agreements with DHS and ICE, which basically creates this task force model where they're working with these federal immigration officers to enforce immigration law. Then you have local police departments are now in the process of doing their agreements so that they're going to be part of the solution as well. And then I directed immediately all of our state agencies, FDLE, Highway Patrol, Fish and Wildlife, State Guard, to do similar agreements. And so you're seeing this, but we just had Brevard County, Wayne Ivey, the sheriff, great sheriff, he started this SHIELD program, and they're busting up. They brought in 6 illegals yesterday. They're doing more. They're working very collaboratively with that. So, if you want to have enforcement of immigration law, you have to have state and local involved. If they're not involved, there just aren't enough federal people to be able to really make a meaningful difference. So I think Florida is definitely leading the way on this. And, people talk about criminal illegal aliens to say, oh, well, if you come here illegally and then you commit more crimes, well, then we'll send you. Well, yeah, you should definitely send them, but that should not be the trigger that you're committing more crimes. I want to send them back before they commit these crimes. Why would we want to have victims in this state when we could do something about it? And so what we did with the special session, we made it a crime to enter Florida illegally. So they just busted a guy who had been deported before. He's back in Florida illegally, somehow, probably under Biden. And so now he's subjected to a felony. And then they can turn them over to ICE, and then they can do this. And the border and the southern is much better now, so the chance of them getting in is probably a lot less than it was in recent years. So that's something that's really, really positive. But I also look at it, it's like, well, we, in the emergency rooms, anyone that shows up gets treated, that's federal law. And so people that come that are illegal, they use the emergency room as like kind of primary care. and that costs money for taxpayers. And they just did the survey. It cost Florida last year $660 million for emergency room services for illegal aliens in the state of Florida. I mean, what could you take 300 million of that and give it to like teacher pay or something like that? I mean, wouldn't people rather do that, cut taxes with it? So it does have burdens, apart from criminal aliens, burdens on taxpayers. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the 80s, must go to public school. Like, you can't say that you have to be here legally. And so they force public schools. So that creates crowding. It creates issues there. And then, of course, the criminal system. And then just even like traffic accidents, not having driver's licenses, insurance, that's a big deal as well. And then with businesses, you know, I was talking to some guy who does like, I think it's roofing. He'll only hire legal people. But because he only hires legal people, he's got to charge more. And so it's harder to get business, because some of these other guys, all the workforce is illegal under the table and they're paying very little. And how is that fair? Wouldn't we want our local businesses who are doing it right to be able to get ahead? And it's almost like you're benefiting people for not doing it right and cutting corners. And that's not what we want to see either. So I think this is a huge, huge effort. I'm glad that we're leading the charge. You're going to hear more from us about what's going on, because these guys now have been in the process. We did the agreements, and we did our agreements very quickly. The locals are now doing, the sheriffs did theirs, the police are getting ready to do theirs, or in the process, some have done it. But then you got to train these guys to be able to exercise the immigration authorities. And that's ongoing. We worked with DHS to get that streamlined. And so you're going to have more and more people that are deputized, because prior to Trump administration, if we had a highway patrol, you had illegal alien driving drunk, endangering motorists, pulled over, we know he's illegal, we know he was driving drunk. If they called ICE and ICE came to get him, fine, but ICE would not do that. They were not permitted to detain and transport to ICE under federal law. Now they're being deputized under the Trump administration to be able to do that. So that makes a huge, huge difference. And just think about your safety as a motorist, as a Floridian on this. And one of the things that has been really frustrating is when you have the fatalities on the roadways by the illegal alien drivers, those almost always followed previous stops and arrests of the same individual. So they're driving drunk, and maybe they don't run into anybody. Obviously, that's fortunate that no one got hit in that instance. But then it's just they go and then they get released. And the catch and release doesn't work. And so those days are over in Florida. We've ramped up very quickly. We've got more ramp up to do. I think you're going to see more that's going to happen in the ensuing weeks and months, and certainly over the balance of the Trump administration. You're going to see a lot that's done that I think a lot of people have been wanting to see for a very, very long time. Okay, thanks everybody. God bless.